This is where the 1930 FIFA World Cup was held. But how did this player die and come back to life? And why were two different balls used in the final? These are the teams that participated. Except these two nations withdrew from the competition, and then Egypt literally missed their boat that was taking them to the World Cup, so they withdrew too. Luckily, the Pharaohs were kind enough to telegraph their apologies. But this left the tournament with an awkward 13 teams. This is a far cry from the current World Cup setup, as less than 100 years later, in 2026, USA, Canada and Mexico will co-host a 48-team World Cup. But back to 1930. None of these teams had to qualify for the tournament, by the way. Every country affiliated with FIFA at the time was invited. However, due to travel restraints in the 1930s, many teams outside of the Americas did not show much interest. FIFA President Jules Rimet, that's the trophy guy, intervened, and 4 European teams were convinced to make the trip by sea. Romania, one of these 4 European teams, entered following the intervention of King Carol II. The newly crowned king of Romania personally handpicked the squad for the World Cup. Can you imagine that? That's like King Charles sitting down with Gareth Southgate prior to Qatar's World Cup and picking the squad. Maybe then Tomori would have a chance of getting picked. Nah, doubt it. The 4 European nations would have to make their way to Uruguay, and for the Romanians, this took a fortnight. 14 days out at sea. You can see why so many nations didn't want to compete. Each game of the World Cup was held in the capital city of Montevideo, within 3 stadiums, one of which being a brand new stadium to mark their 100 years of independence, which will host the final, aptly named the Estadio Centenario, which due to construction being rushed and delays due to the rainy season, the main stadium was not ready until 5 days into the tournament. Now that all the teams have arrived in Uruguay, well, nearly all of them, why were they even there? Who picked Uruguay to host this tournament? Uruguay were given their hosting rights due to the previous successes winning the last 2 Olympic gold medals, as well as Uruguay agreeing to pay for the team's travel costs and splitting the profits with FIFA. Some nicely timed donations from a Uruguayan cattle farmer and businessman also led to them hosting the World Cup. Seems like corruption has never been too far away from a FIFA World Cup bid. Well, the teams are here, so let's play some football, for the most part. Bolivia, the most fashionable team at the World Cup, boasted some of their players playing in berets. Talk about a fashion statement. They also attempted to pay tribute to their hosts by spelling Viva Uruguay on their shirts, but ended up forgetting a U, quite like Speed did in his World Cup song. The King's Men were another team to fall short at this World Cup, beating Peru 3-1 in front of the smallest crowd in World Cup history, and losing to Uruguay in one of 3 three-team groups meant that Romania were on their way home, during which Romanian midfielder Alfred Eisenbeiser Ferraru fell ill and was sent to hospital when the ship stopped in Genoa. When the team returned to Bucharest, rumours had spread that he had died. Convinced by the rumours, his mother made funeral arrangements. On the day of his wake, Alfred walked through the door. Fittingly, his mother fainted at the sight of him. Luckily for the family, Alfred had recovered. He went on to compete in the Olympics in Los Angeles in both the figure skating and the bobsleigh. What a rollercoaster of emotions. Back in Uruguay, Argentina made some odd decisions in their group games. Their first game against France saw Luis Monti take out 2 French players with brutal tackles before scoring a free kick with 8 minutes to go. 3 minutes later, Marcel Langele found himself through on goal, only for the Brazilian referee to blow the full-time whistle, with at least 5 minutes on the clock. A pitch invasion ensued, and the French were fueled with rage. Once mounted police restored order, the match continued, but Argentina held on to win 1-0. In their second group game against Mexico, a 6-3 thriller by the way, they were without their captain Manuel Ferreira, who had returned to Buenos Aires to complete a law exam. Luckily, Argentina won the game, as Guillermo Stavile scored a hat-trick on his international debut. Again, the police had to intervene a bust-up during their group game against Chile after a foul on Arturo Torres by Monti. However, it was the semi-final clash with the USA which caught the eye. On a rain-drenched pitch, a mass brawl broke out as the USA midfielder Ralph Tracy was injured and after the game diagnosed with a broken leg. Another American had 4 teeth knocked out in the melee and had his lip ripped off, while another teammate was taken to hospital due to injuries in his stomach. Back when the game was alive and well. However, certainly the most bizarre part of this game was when the trainer of the USA ran onto the pitch to treat one of the wounded, but he's carrying a bottle of chloroform in his medical bag, which breaks. The fumes were released, knocking him out, and he had to be stretchered off. I'm not sure who he was planning on kidnapping with that bottle of chloroform, but that seemed to have backfired. At a time of no substitutes, the US played on with a man down and an injured goalkeeper. Argentina won 6-1, and the start of the Argentine, who knows? Well, their shithousery at the World Cup began. So start as you mean to go on, I guess. Argentina's opponents in the final have also had a strong campaign to reach the final, just about beating Peru 1-0 with a goal from Hector Castro, who only had 1 arm by the way. The hosts and favourites flew past Romania to qualify for the semi-finals. There, the Uruguayans went a goal down to Yugoslavia before matching Argentina's score in the other semi-final. In a repeat of the 1928 Olympic final, Argentine fans had a war cry of victory or death, Some 15,000 fans boarded a steamship to make their way to Montevideo, but getting lost in heavy fog, the ship arrived a day after the final. Those fans that arrived at the stadium were searched for weapons at the gates, as the Centenario opened 6 hours before kickoff. The official attendance to the final was 93,000. Prior to kickoff, some rules were put down for the match. Belgian referee John Longinus, all referees wore suits by the way, agreed to officiate the game under 2 conditions. He was to be given a police escort to and from the game, and there was to be a boat in the harbour within an hour of the final whistle in case a quick escape was required to avoid angry fans and players. Another rule had to be disputed by FIFA themselves. Until the final, Argentina had refused to use the ball provided by Uruguay, instead using a ball they had brought from their own country. Now facing each other, neither team wanted to use the ball provided by the opposing team. FIFA stepped in, and each team would have to compromise. Argentina's ball would be used in the first half before switching to the Uruguayan ball in the second half. Using their own ball, Argentina went to half-time leading 2-1. However, with the switching of the ball, Uruguay came alive, coming back to win 4-2 on home soil, with the last of the 4 goals scored by the one-armed Hector Castro. Riots and the trashing of the city ensued, especially by those late arriving Argentine fans. This led to 2 people being shot and a woman being stoned in Buenos Aires after brandishing the Uruguayan flag. The victorious Uruguayan players were celebrated as champions and rewarded with a house each by their government. This Uruguay team still has the best goal difference of any World Cup winner, with +12. Great success! Hopefully the 2022 World Cup comes in with just as many shocks. Oh look, it did. Buy me a coffee in the description. Thank you.